Hello, and thank you for joining me after my hibernation of sorts. As you can see from the title of today's episode, we are talking about reflective practice, what we do in the classroom, why we do it, and considering the self, who are we as teachers, what do we bring to the classroom. Today's guest is Thomas Farrell, and he has quite an easy definition for self-reflection.
Reflective practice is research by teachers, with teachers, for teachers. Did you get that?
I did. So let's jump straight into it and think about ourselves.
If we could start with a bit of a background. So who are you? Who are you, man?
I'm Tom, and I teach at Brock University.
Okay.
And Brock University has about 19,000 students, so small, comprehensive university.
Okay. Yeah.
And we're a comprehensive university.
Right.
I teach in the Department of Applied Linguistics. I'm Professor of Applied Linguistics, and I teach sociolinguistics to undergrads and in our graduate program as well. And but my area of research is reflective practice.
Aha. All right. So that's kind of the subject for today then. So in general, what is reflective practice? What's the philosophy behind it?
Yeah, well, you see, that's a very interesting question. I've been working on that for the past 35 years,
Wow.
believe it or not.
Okay.
And it seems quite obvious that everybody reflects, as in the word thinking or whatever.
Okay.
And within religion, it's been very popular over the centuries, Buddhism, existentialism, if you want to go that route.
Right.
But simply put, from teaching perspective, I'm interested in reflective practice for language teachers. Continuing my background, I was a teacher before I became an academic.
Okay.
And I consider myself a teacher-scholar or scholar-teacher, if that's what you want, with the hyphen in there.
Right.
Because it's all circular and cyclical for me. My practice informs my research and vice versa.
Right.
So reflective practice is a complex concept, believe it or not. It's more than just thinking on the way home after class on the bus or subway about what you did in your class or what went well or what not. It's more of an in-depth analysis of your practice and yourself and who you are as a person as well. So I won't answer what reflective practice is in one sentence because that's very reductionist.
Sure.
But I will tell you that I'm in Korea at the moment at the conference tomorrow, and I will be presenting my new framework for reflecting on practice. And the framework, in my opinion, is simple. And actually, I presented it at TESOL in Baltimore last year, and a Russian academic came up after me and said, that's very simple. Why didn't I think of it? And I said, well, I'm a very simple person. But it's taken 35 years to come up with this.
And a lot of the best ideas, they're good ideas because they seem simple. They seem like this is obvious, but people didn't think about it.
Well, yeah, but it's in that sense. But I wasn't looking for simplicity or for complexity at all. I was looking for a way to provide language teachers the means to become whole humans as they teach, so to speak. Okay. And that involves not only looking at the classroom and what you do and why you do it, but also looking at the self and who you are within the teacher who's presenting yourself in the classroom. Okay. So the new framework has that involved in it as well. Right. And I was lucky. I've gotten a few grants in Canada recently, and the money allowed me to reflect on reflective practice because I'd been at it for 30 years. Okay. And I decided to step back because reflection needs reflection, believe it or not. Right. And so I developed a new framework in reaction to the frameworks and approaches that I have seen in the past and recently. And I'll be talking about that a little bit at the conference tomorrow.
Okay.
But basically, I find the frameworks are very narrow. and they're very they seem to be on the administration side of what are you doing, why are you doing it,
Right.
and what's the result, with the idea that it's input output that we are trying to break in the first place. So I thought, wait a minute, we're replacing old checklists about what you do in the classroom with new checklists about what maybe you should be doing in a classroom, and that's not what reflective practice is.
Okay.
So it's been used and abused over the past 30 years, in my opinion, and it's in every MA program's manual. We will have our students reflect,
Right.
and I always say, well, what does that mean? And everybody thinks they know what it means,
Right.
but everybody has a different opinion about what reflective practice is.
So what are some of the common misconceptions then about what reflection is?
One of the biggest ones is it's just thinking about what you're doing. And that sounds, well, isn't that what it is? Well, yes, but I have worked in this area for many, many years, and what a teacher thinks they do in class and what they actually do is not necessarily the same. And I found that about 98% of the time in my narrow life, so to speak, and with the people I've worked with. So that's a huge misconception. That some teachers, they go home on the bus and they're congratulating themselves, or worse, they go home and they think, oh, my class went really bad, and they want to give up teaching or whatever, if they have any conscience, so to speak, rather than counting the money. But then again, if you consider, I always ask teachers questions such as, how do you know it went well or didn't go well? And they always think, well, I feel or I touch, and actually today I'll be talking a little bit about that, on how So when I talk about reflective practice, I talk about evidence-based reflective practice. So that's one of the answers to the that misconception, so to speak.
Right.
So if you think your class went well or didn't go well, it may have nothing to do with you. If your class goes well, it may have nothing to do with you. That's the fallacy of the teacher, so to speak. Or if it doesn't go well and you prepare a lot and you beat yourself up, well, wait a minute, it may have nothing to do with you. They may have been beaten up previously. So what we do is a very complex act in the classroom.
Sure.
And as Stevik said years and years and years ago, he called it the miracle of the classroom. And I totally agree with it. It's like every time I observe teachers, I think, wow, isn't this wonderful? And then and then if Andrew or Andy and Tom go and observe a class, the same class, I bet we have different opinions about what we saw.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And so how do you reconcile that within our so-called professional practice? We can, by the way.
Oh, there is a kind of...
Well, there is a way, because it doesn't really matter what we think. It matters what the teacher thinks. That's what it's all about. Reflective practice is what the teacher thinks, because it's the teacher that's going to have to lead the class every day, not supervisors or administrators. Not going to be holding their hand, etc.
Okay.
And then there's preconceived notions of what good teaching or bad teaching is.
Right.
Do you know what good teaching is, Andy? Because if you do, please let me know.
Yes.
So
I'll send it on to you.
This brings me back full circle to the teacher behind the practice, so to speak, and that's why in a lot of these approaches are missing the teacher. But where's the teacher? You can't separate the teacher from the act of teaching.
Right.
But the teacher's separated. Well, now, Andy, what did you do well in class? Well, I would say, Andy, tell me about yourself, and then tell me about your class. The teacher knows the class better than anybody else. So, action research, what we're doing is we're reducing teaching to something going well or not so well.
Okay.
We must move beyond that.
Right.
We must move beyond that. And so, I'm careful because I know I'm going to step on toes. It wouldn't be the first time. And I've told people, and teacher cognition research is academics looking at what teachers believe they do in class, and good luck with that one. And it's the research is for academics. It never comes down to the teacher. A lot of research never comes to the teacher. Nobody cares what the teachers think, really. It's just I go in there and, well, what do you believe now, Andy, about what you're doing? And you write it all down, and you write it up and put it in a journal that the teacher never reads. Right. And it's research on teachers, for academics, by academics. Reflective practice is research by teachers, with teachers, for teachers. Did you get that?
I did. It's a good little soundbite. So previously, the kind of reflective practice would be just focusing on the students. Then, what were the students achieving?
There you go. No. Reflective practice, actually, the beneficiaries ultimately are, guess what? The students.
Right.
Because if you have a reflective teacher will encourage reflective learning, which is what it's all about too. And reflective learning will feed back into the reflective teacher as such.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, you talked about asking quite profound questions about who am I as a teacher. So what kind of questions would you ask to kind of inspire those answers?
I'll give you 3 questions I'm going to ask tomorrow. And I'm assuming this won't come out before tomorrow.
No,
okay.
Weeks in advance.
Okay, Andy, I'll ask you.
Okay.
Okay. The word teacher means to me. I became a teacher because. And then the last one is, I believe teaching is a vocation or a calling because. And then, these are 3 questions of many I have within the framework that I just talked about. And I call these narrative frames.
Okay.
And they're narrative frames because they're like the window frame. It's like I became a teacher because, bang, 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 and then you fill it out.
Yeah.
And most likely, you put people on the spot. It's because, And I have answers that Celt Chat, is that correct? It's like a Korean teachers Twitter group.
Oh, right.
Mike, do you know Michael Griffin? No? Michael,
yeah, I do.
Michael, I think,
Twitter,
was that.
yeah.
Michael showed me these. I actually did a workshop here a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and apparently they took this on board, some of these questions, and brought it into that. So I have some of their answers.
Oh, really?
But what I'm doing is I'm only bringing them on just a little bit of this and that, the whole lot tomorrow. So these are some of the questions that get who you are as a teacher. And here's one of the ones that I'm not going to ask tomorrow, but I'd ask. It's one that's really got to me over the years. Actually, I got it in a different book, and it's framed differently. But what I would say is, the frame is, my legacy as a teacher will be, and especially for beginning teachers, and then they can revisit it several years later when they see that, well, wait a minute, I blew that up, It's like I'm reading my tombstone. I'm at my gravesite and reading my tombstone, which is frightening, as you know yourself.
Terrifying.
But it's like who you want to be, But I remember teaching, and it was always about the personal contact that got to me. Always about the personal contact with the students. Not necessarily I am, you are, not the verbs or not the grammar or not the writing, not the mechanical aspects of the skills of what, but who we are ourselves. I always enjoyed it, and I believe I was successful, but I never knew why. I never knew what I was doing. That's why I went on to become, I did a PhD in linguistics, and I loved every moment of it, and what fueled that was the classroom. But I never, I hope, I've never lost sight of my roots.
Right.
My feet are firmly planted in the classroom. And I'm very practical, I'm not theoretical, and this is why I follow, I was a very a fan of Donald Schoen's work, because he's very practical. And by the way, he never worked with teachers per se, and people always cite him in education journalism. That's annoying me these days as well. They cite Dewey, and they cite Schoen. They're different people. And it's a different approach to reflective practice than me at the moment too. But that's taken me 34 years to figure out.
Sure.
But I use them all, you know what I mean? I'm standing on the shoulders of giants, so to speak. I mean, falling off the shoulders of giants. But it's interesting when you consider, the complexities of what we do as language teachers. Yet in Korea and other countries, still you have the native speaker issue. I get to that in a moment too, but because I'm going to say what you may not want me to say, but I will anyway. But it's like. Well, I'll say it then. Native speaker is you speak it, therefore you teach it. But we know that's totally untrue. Right. But I disagree with the idea of native or non-native speaker dichotomy. I'm totally against it politically.
All right.
And I believe that there are people in our field, academics, who are using non-nest. Is that what it's called? Like
N-nest.
N-nest. As a form of promoting their own political agenda and making an academic career out of that.
Okay.
They're in other words, they like to keep the dichotomy split and complain, non-native speakers. Look, you're either a qualified teacher or a non-qualified teacher. you don't look at the person's skin color or language. Is your medical doctor, a native speaker of whatever, and what's the doctor's skin color? You never ask that.
No.
You're either a qualified doctor or not. That's the problem in our profession.
Right.
And so when you consider that, but the other side of that is, when I talk about qualified teacher, I think, oh my God, teaching is so complicated, so complex. It is so interesting. For me, a classroom is not a classroom. It's a center of inquiry. And it's not a place only where students learn. It's also a place where teachers learn. I learn every day there.
Absolutely.
And if you consider that, you think, oh my God, I honestly know nothing about what I'm doing. I just keep doing it, and hopefully someday I'll figure it out. But so reflective practice is fascinating for me, because it encompasses all about what we do, and it's I'm very limited. That's all I do. I mean, that's it. People say, well, do you do this? Or I'm very interested in novice teachers as well, because I was one. I do a lot of work with novice teachers,
Sure.
and I'm doing research projects on that at the moment, and I just have a new book out on that.
Okay.
And it's from trainee to teacher with Equinox, which is a UK publisher, if you're familiar with them.
Yes.
And the book is about, I studied 3 novice teachers in Canada, and their first year of teaching. We had a reflective practice group, and I had nothing to do with the institution. And it was amazing how they survived because of the group, no other way. They had no backup, and they were part-time, because that's how you get a job in Canada. You start part-time and you go into it. And it's like, one of the chapters' title is, it's like walking into a swamp. That was what teacher said to the group after the first week, And another chapter title is, here's the book, go teach. This is like,
That's a lot of people's experience, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and so there's, speaking of dichotomies, there's a huge dichotomy between teacher training or teacher education. I hate the word training. Teacher education, training, you train animals, to a certain extent, but teacher education and the reality of the classroom. We give them, well, yes, today we're going to have we're going to do a course in psycholinguistics. That's lovely, but the theoretical courses are lovely. Don't get me wrong; it's very good for your brain and intellectual development.
Yeah.
But we must prepare them for the realities of the classroom as well. So I do a lot of work, especially recently in that, because I was a teacher who was in a classroom and being observed in my first year teaching, and the observer who was a supervisor at the school said, "Thomas, that's not the way to teach. Sit down here, I'll show you how to teach." I was doing group work. Apparently that was alien. No, we'll drill them. Whitney grammar, drill, baby, drill. And I sat down there and I thought, what? That was in 1979. And I thought, will I give up or will I continue? I had friends who kept me going along the way. And I keep telling the story as well. And without their help, I would have given up.
But do you think that's changed then since the late 70s? Do you think attitudes to group work and things?
No, it hasn't. Unfortunately, we're still, TESOL, or TESOL, or whatever you want to call it. It's an industry, and you have so many people on the periphery who are pulling strings, mostly publishers, without any decorum, so to speak, without any knowledge of what we should be doing. And you have academics who have just made it an academic exercise because they must get promoted and tenured and all that kind of stuff. And then you have teachers in the middle, so to speak, of which nobody really cares. I believe that my job is a bridge between theory and the classroom for teachers.
Right.
And teachers don't have time to do a lot of what I have time to do. And the fact that I get research grants to do it, everything I do is for teachers in the front lines, because I was a teacher in the front line.
Right.
And so, I don't speak to academics because I tell them what I think of them, and they don't like that. Oh, no. I was in New Zealand in July. I was the Ian Gordon Fellow at the Victoria University in Wellington. It sounds very grand. And for that you have to give a public lecture. And before me was last year the Ian Gordon Fellow. Yeah, they give you the pen. They took care of me, put it that way. I don't want to say too much. But the previous year was Deborah Cameron. Do you know her? Yeah, Metaphor, and Jack Richards. Jack I know quite well, and David Graddle, I think, and some big names. And then Tom. Then there's Tom, And the title of my talk was "The Art of Burglary and Learning to Teach." Yes, and the way Andy is responding with great interest, or saying what, And I gave the lecture, and what usually happens is there were a lot of pre-cert. I was teaching a course as well on reflective practice for 2 weeks every day, which is, oh my goodness, a highlight of my life career. I really enjoyed the course, and I used my framework. And yes, usually the pre-service teachers or teachers in their first year, they responded so well to the lecture, and then the academics were what, like this. Well, because I said, you know what, we're not preparing teachers for classrooms. And they didn't like it at all, because I'm telling them they're not doing their job properly. And I keep telling them that. Right. And I've written about it in many, many places, and especially in the last 4 years. I can show you if you like. And it's a reality check that we need within our profession.
Right, and that's something you wrote about a couple of years ago, was
yes,
it? You actually wrote the reality check of
exactly. It was. I edited a book on innovations in language teacher education, and by Palgrave, I think it was last year, or the year before, and my chapter, which is free on the net if you want, it's a reality check. So I started off. The first sentence is, I've been asked to write state-of-the-art article on language teacher education, and I said, and I will. Language teacher education is in a right state. And I said, it's no longer an art. It's something like that, right? But the point is that let's get real here. We've got to protect the teachers in the classroom. Right. What we do is we throw them into the classroom, and especially if we have an MA program, and they graduate, we hope they get a job,
right,
but we don't follow them, and they go out and they sink or swim on their own. And then have you ever heard of Dan Lorty's Apprenticeship of Observation? You haven't heard of that? Okay. Lorty was an American educator, and one of his most interesting sociological works were on the lives of teachers, so to speak. And he came up with this saying, apprenticeship of observation. And he said, most teachers spend 13,000 hours as apprentices observing teachers when they're in kindergarten, elementary school, high school and whatnot, and you build up an image of what good teaching and bad teacher is. And so that is so powerful for pre-service teachers in a program like MA TESOL, which is possibly 200 hours. I don't know how long it is. Usually programs are 200 hours. Yeah. So you tell me, which is more powerful, 200 hours of a program or 13,000 hours as apprentices? So what happens is when they go out into a real classroom, the first sign of trouble, so to speak, i.e. the first day, and they think, oh my God, these are humans in here and they're running around or whatever. What do? Well, they revert back to their prior beliefs of what good teaching is. Right. So you can say to me now, then there's no point in having a teacher education program. No, there is a point. Yeah. So as teacher educators like yourself, what we do is we make them articulate their beliefs about, let's say you're teaching them grammar, pedagogical grammar. Let's say that's part of, I don't know what your course outlines are here. So what you do is you try and you make them articulate their beliefs about their grammar, their prior learning experiences. Oh yeah, well my teacher said drill, drill, drill. Well, it's no good you saying, well, no, we have to do the communicative method. And they'll all buy it because it sounds good. Yeah, that's really good. But once they hit the classroom, after the first week, they're going to start drilling them again because they feel more comfortable that way. So this is what I've been fighting about recently. Sure. That involves reflection and the whole idea of reflective practice. So what we do is we graduate reflective practitioners so that they're able for any situation they meet in the school.
Right.
And they don't run to the past. They think, well, wait a minute, what can I do here? Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, one of the phrases you used before, it was the name of one of your books or papers, but the reawakening your passion for teaching.
Yes.
Which is a great phrase to begin with. So, how does reflective practices kind of reawaken that?
I'll give you an example. How about that?
Go ahead.
I've known a teacher in Canada for quite a number of years. So I'll couch it, okay? He or she
All right.
Right.
The mystery, I like it.
Yeah. May or may not have been my student, undergraduate and MA. Okay,
Maybe.
in applied linguistics. So there is no theoretical knowledge this person does not know. So this person went to teach in his or her first year, okay,
Right.
and invited me to follow the person for the first year, and I did. And what I found was such an enthusiastic teacher. We met once a week.
Wow.
In fact, we met in a pub. And being the professional I am, I drank Coca-Cola while I bribed him with a pint. And I brought my recorder. And we talked about teaching once a week for a year in the pub every
Wow.
Thursday. And from 4 to 5, because they turned the music down.
Yeah.
And it was quiet. And I didn't want other people to see us around. And so that's why we picked that. And he wrote a journal once a week. And he allowed me to observe him teach. And went through the whole year, fantastic introduction to teaching, so to speak. He was she was very much into it, and you know, there were huge gaps in terms of where he or she found him or herself teaching.
Yeah.
And I still have all that data that I didn't touch yet. I have it all.
Okay.
Because I was wondering, you know, and I waited. I wanted to wait for a while to make sure that nobody could connect me with this person too.
Mhm.
So I always leave it a little bit longer. Then I met that person 3 years later,
Right.
and the person, I just said to the person, "How you doing?" He or she said, "Oh, not so good. I really had a bad semester," and the person looked down. I mean, if you can, you know,
Yeah.
from a person who was really, you know, bubbly and whatnot. So I said, you know, what's going on? And then he or she gave me a few examples. And then I said, well, you know, you're hitting me at the right time. Would you like to go into your 4th year and we'll do 1 semester of reflective practice the same as before? He or she said yes. And we met, and what I found was, oh my goodness, day and night, he or she had been beaten down by the system and had basically given up and was going through the motions. But you could not tell it unless you knew that person. And then I observed his or her classes. I think they were grammar classes.
Right.
And it was amazing. I've never seen so much writing on slides because it was mechanical. And when we got into the process, this teacher realized what was going on. And it was very interesting because I changed my research approach. I had a recorder, right? He was speaking, and I gave him the recorder after every session. It was once a week, and asked the person, I think I said, to transcribe, and I paid the person to transcribe.
Really?
And then reflect. Yes, and then reflect on the transcription, which was a double reflection. And so we went through that, and I realized and the person came back out the other side, and it was fascinating. And the person realized exactly what was going on after the fact.
Wow.
I said to you, that's one teacher. How many other teachers are suffering like that? I dare say a lot, but other academics, well, that's a case study. Not all teachers like that. I have found so many teachers in different parts of the world.
I bet it's so common.
Yes.
I bet it's really common. But you said they were beaten down, but beaten down by what, the administration side?
The administration, the system, the students, some students lack of interest, but they allowed themselves to be beaten down. You know, it's I don't blame administrations. That's reality. You have the power to change, to make the change within your own classroom. I don't care what they're doing outside mine. I do what I'm going to do, right? And that teacher had lost the desire to teach, for whatever reason.
Wow.
It was but I could see it, and then I could see the person coming out the other side with the
Wow.
yeah, yes.
So, I mean, is it, if the administration, for example, fixes you to a certain kind of syllabus and a certain checkboxes that you have to hit, let's say grammar,
You can do that, but you don't teach a textbook, you manipulate it.
Right.
Do you understand? So if they give me, here's the book, go teach, fine, I'll do it. I'll do it my way. You know what I mean? no, don't blame the administration. Oh, but they're going to be tested on grammar after. Sure. How do you teach the past tense? You can bore them crap out of them, or you can give them a peanut butter sandwich. Have you ever used that? Yes, I have. I went into it when I was teaching pedagogical grammar as a concept for within the teacher education course in Singapore when I was based there. I decided that I was getting really bored with myself explaining this and having them explain grammar items. So I brought in 2 pieces of bread and peanut butter, and I took it out in class. And just at the beginning, they looked at me. Nobody was sleeping, by the way. Nobody was bored. I took it out and I took peanut butter and I took the knife out. And they were looking with their jaws rolled. And I said, "What am I doing?" "You're making a sandwich." "Good." And then I did, and I said, and what did I do?" "You made a sandwich."
Right.
Yeah. And I said, and you answered correctly, grammatically. And this is where we started the grammar items, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And what I found out is on when they went on teaching practice, most of my students brought peanut butter sandwiches, and the other supervisors had no idea what they were doing. but the students weren't bored. And then another student teacher of mine in Singapore years ago showed me another way of teaching grammar. And the archetypical student who switched off in Singapore had his head, surgically attached to the wall. And you just leave them alone. I was told, leave him alone, right? So, Singapore is like every other country in the world. There are, interesting students at the back of the class. So I was observing this teacher. And then this person, the student, had his head, surgically attached to the wall. He was eyeballing me, wondering, what's this foreigner doing in my class? I was the supervisor. Mm-hmm. And then the teacher put on a videotape. In those days, they had videotapes.
The old VHS.
And it was Mr. Bean. And I was teaching grammar through Mr. Bean. And the head moved. And nobody in the class had ever seen this head move in a lesson before. And the head moved. And he was interested. In other words, you can make it interesting, right? So, no, and you know what it all boils down to?
What's that?
Who you are as a teacher.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Who is the Andrew or Andy inside that classroom, no matter what you're teaching? Who is it you? Are you true to yourself? Are you? Or are you? So if somebody says you have to teach it this way, well, if they insist and then, straitjacket you, maybe that's not the school for you to work in.
Right.
And you can use your feet to walk out. So don't give me that as an excuse. Oh, I need to have a job. Okay, well, you know what? Consider, the political aspect. I always tell my MA graduates, I say, you're no longer just a teacher, although just a teacher is better than an MA graduate, to be honest.
Right.
I say, no, now you're a leader in the field. Now if you see inconsistencies, then you critically reflect on this and don't let it happen. And because if you do, it's on your watch. This is the difference, and this is why we have these programs now.
Right.
So reflection for me is, practice for me is very much on the teacher's side in the front lines.
Mm-hmm.
To have them become more aware of their surroundings, be it inside or outside the classroom, and to be able to use this awareness to make informed decisions about their teaching and their lives maybe as teachers.
Right.
Reflection is a way of life, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Would you do it like after every class, or
no? You don't have to do it after. You don't want to become totally neurotic about what you do either. No, I ask teachers, how many of you have recorded their classes? No hands go up, or 2 or 3. Right. Well, I think you should at least once in your career record your class and then transcribe it. But transcribing, as you probably know, takes a long time. 1 hour takes 24 hours, possibly. But say, hire somebody or whatever. But now there's technology that you can use that wasn't in my day.
Right.
But transcribe, you don't have to transcribe it all. You can transcribe parts of it. But it's like you can transcribe all the questions you ask. And then you can have a colleague sit in the class and write them down and compare the two of them. So that's what you can do, or you can have a level of interest of something when you start. How I started reflection is cynically, may I add, in terms of I started to write. I thought in 1983, will I stop teaching? Will I continue? I didn't know what I was doing. I started writing, and I never wrote a diary in my life. And if you knew me in my younger years, you would think, well, really, you did? And I wrote for about 3 months, and I wrote anything. I found it, A, very cathartic.
Sure.
B, I found patterns of what was coming over and over, and I thought, oh my goodness, this is powerful. And that's, you know, I write a lot.
Right.
You know, how do I know what I think until I see what I say? E.M. Forrester.
Yeah.
That's my favorite reflective mode. But some people don't like writing, and that's fine. Some people like talking. So there are many ways of doing it.
So for anybody who's really interested, they want to really get into this reflective practice, what's the first place to start? First thing to
do is buy my books.
Buy the book. Available from all good bookshops online.
Yeah, actually, I have a web page.
Okay.
And I have a whole. I try to put all my papers free up there.
Okay, I'll link to it in the.
Great. Yeah, it's www.reflectiveinquiry.ca. reflectiveinquiry. One word. But the most recent paper I have up there, you'll love the title or not. It's called TESOL, A Profession That Eats Its Young. That's the paper, and I published it in an Iranian journal.
Oh.
And by the way, the special it's a special edition of this journal, and Jack Richards was the editor, and Donald Freeman has a paper in there. It's a very practical journal, actually, online. It's a good journal.
Okay.
And it's a newish one of the good ones, to be honest. But that particular title annoyed some people within the TESOL profession, and for a so-called academic journal of famous repute asked me to change the title, and I withdrew the paper.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can see that I'm annoying a certain number of people.
All right. Well, we've got to wrap it up because you have to go and give your talk in a few minutes. Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me. You probably want to edit all of it out.